Well, there are 2.2 million registered gun owners in this country, and I want to get some reaction to what we've heard from the Liberal Party today and gun control policy. Tracey Wilson is the Vice President of Public Relations for the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, and she is with me in the studio. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in to speak with me.
Thanks
so you heard this proposal there's a couple of different parts to it. So why don't we start with, I guess it's the big one, and that is the proposal that if they're re-elected, the Liberals will ban all semi-automatic rifles. Let's start there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, personally, I think it's a slap in the face, not only to gun owners, but to victims of crime. I think they had a real opportunity here to do something that all Canadians could get behind and do something about the gang violence and the crime that we're seeing. And instead, they've chosen to do this. Why
is it a slap in the face?
Well, because you're talking about, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Canadians that own those rifles, that follow all the rules, no matter how ridiculous they are. They cooperate with everything the government demands of us. We're not running around the streets shooting people up. We do have a rising gang violence problem, and that's been completely ignored in this. So it's a slap in the face to everybody.
In part, I guess, the thrust of the government's announcement and the sort of reasoning for it, as stated, is that, look, these are semi-automatic rifles. They cause a lot of damage in the wrong hands, and to your point. But I guess it raises the question, why does anybody except the military or the police need a semi-automatic assault-style rifle? What's the answer to that question?
Well, first of all, I think it's incumbent on the government to define what an assault rifle really is. Traditionally, the classic definition of an assault rifle means it has the capability to also be full auto. That's been banned in Canada for decades already. Now, I have AR-15s that I sport shoot with. I also have hunting rifles.
This would cover that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I also have hunting rifles that I hunt deer and moose with, and they're also semi-auto. So you're talking about firearms that belong to millions of Canadians who have done nothing wrong to deserve such an attack, yet there wasn't one measure discussed today that would have any effect on the violent crime we're seeing in Canada.
Explain what a so we all talking the same language. Semi-automatic rifle is what? So can it shoot off bursts of bullets faster than a single bullet?
No, I think that's Hollywood talk. Just like my hunting rifle, my AR-15 is restricted to a magazine capacity of 5. So you have 5 bullets in total. Every time you want to expel one cartridge from the firearm, it requires a depression of the trigger each time. So, there's no spray and pray or whatever it is the criminals are doing. They may very well have those firearms, but they're also in illegal possession of them.
Right. So so do hunters need these?
Yeah, I hunt with semi-auto. So does everyone in my family. I've only ever hunted with a semi-auto, and there's multiple reasons for that. If you were hunting with a single action firearm, you might not have the best shot. You might need to take a second follow-up shot in order to do a humane hunt, right? So my hunting rifle that looks like something Grandpa owned operates exactly the same way my AR-15 does, which may look, it may look scary, but operationally and functionally, they're the exact same.
So what will the effect of this be then? The stated purpose of this from the government today was say, look, get these off the street, get them out of the hands of criminals, because sometimes the criminals get them by stealing them from lawful gun owners or from gun shops. So what effect do you think this will have? Will this have the desired effect of what the government is trying to get to?
No, and I don't think this is intended to be a public safety measure. I think this is a political measure. The fallout from this is going to be tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money going to try and confiscate legally acquired firearms from legal firearms. Well,
you say confiscate, and they of course call it a buyback. They'll say, look, one of the things they heard from gun owners was, if you're going to do, what are you going to do? You have to buy everything back. I paid for my guns. So in some ways, they seem to be suggesting today they've called your bluff. They said, okay, you want us to buy them back? We'll buy them back.
Well, I've never said such a thing because my guns aren't for sale. But as a taxpayer, I'd have to wonder what government would take tens of billions of taxpayer dollars to buy back.
Is that what you think it'll be? Because they haven't costed it. They have not costed it.
Yeah, I know there was a little list of 8 firearms they were looking at, semi-automatic, sporting arms that they were looking at. If we're talking all semi-autos, you're going to be in tens of billions of dollars. to do this. And I think those resources would be better allocated towards root causes of violence, maybe at-risk youth initiatives or community programming. Like this is crazy. Any Canadian who thinks this is a great idea hasn't really looked at what is going on in the streets of our cities.
What about they're also saying that there was a lot of people who thought, well, there was some discussion around them putting a national ban on handguns too. They haven't done that. They're going to leave that to municipalities. They'll give municipalities the powers to decide individually who wants to ban handguns, who doesn't, who wants to further restrict them. What about that?
How does that even work? I mean, there's 100,000 RPAL holders, so that's a restricted firearms license to own a handgun in Toronto alone. There's 60,000 here in Ottawa. So what would that mean? Would we just move outside the city limits? I don't understand what the purpose of that would be. Meanwhile, the gangs are laughing. They're rolling around in the streets, laughing at a government that would simplify such a complicated, complex issue.
What's a better way to have done it then? I mean, if they're trying to deal with gun violence, that's what the whole purpose of this announcement was today, this promise. What should they be doing differently then?
They should be targeting the people doing the crime. There's a couple of things they could do. They could invest more in communities. I mean, we can give the police all the resources we want. I agree they need more. That's basically the only funding they've handed out. What about community at-risk youth initiatives? What about targeting these youth before they get into a life of crime? There's also the problem of illegal firearms flowing across the border. We share 8,000 kilometers of invisible border with the most gun-saturated country in the world, yet there's nothing about that. There's a multitude of measures that resources should be allocated for instead of chasing around duck hunters and sport shooters. It's mind-boggling.
But is it really, like, when you say duck hunters and sport shooters, like, I guess, what would change for you if you had to give up semi-automatic rifles?
It would require about $60,000 worth of my private property, leaving my...
No, but what would change in your life as a hunter?
Oh, well, it would mean I would no longer deer hunt. I would no longer moose hunt. I wouldn't be out enjoying the outdoors with my daughters and my grandson. It would ruin a way of...
Unless you use a different rifle.
Sure, but it would, that's not how I hunt. So it would affect my sport. It's the only sport I can participate in at my age, and that I'm on a level playing field.
Wait a minute, there's lots of stuff we can do at our ages here.
Well, if I was to join a men's hockey league right now, I probably wouldn't be very successful. However, I can go to the range and, saddle up beside some of these big strapping lads that are at the gun range, and I can outshoot them no problem. It's the most inclusive sport that sees no barriers for gender, for age, for physical ability. Anybody can participate and do really well.
So if the Liberals get reelected and they push ahead with this policy, what will the reaction be from the gun owner community, or a large portion of the gun owner community? How do you respond to this measure if it looks like they're headed into making this into a law?
I think when governments implement radical policies like this, we can see from the lack of success in Quebec with their, something as simple as a long gun registry, which is, highly opposed by gun owners. Now imagine if you were talking about going to their homes and confiscating their firearms or expecting them to turn them in. I think this is a very radical measure that's going to have very little to no impact on public safety. And I'm not sure how eager gun owners would be to participate.
Are you saying they wouldn't follow the law if they're told? They're talking about a 2-year amnesty. Once this is in place, you have 2 years to turn in your semi-automatic rifles, and we'll pay you market value for them, but you got 2 years to do it. And you're saying people won't do it?
It's pretty complicated. I've got AR-15s that are restricted, so they're registered, and then I've also got guns that are functionally exactly the same as an AR-15, and it's non-restricted. So there's no registry for them. So they don't even know how many guns they're even talking about. It could be tens of millions of guns out there, costing tens of billions of dollars in buybacks. I think it's very ambitious, and I don't think it's going to work out very well.
All right, Tracey Wilson, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter.